Okay, so we've made it just about to the end of Self-Reliance, and I'm continuing off at point 4, and let's see how quickly I can get this one wrapped up. Here we go. Point 4. As our religion, our education, our art look abroad, so does our spirit of society. All men plume themselves on the improvement of society, and no man improves. Society never advances. It recedes as fast on one side as it gains on the other. It undergoes continual changes. It is barbarous, it is civilized, it is Christianized, it is rich, it is scientific, but this change is not amelioration. Amelioration meaning this change is not an improvement. Things are not getting better. So what he's saying here is very important, that even though our religion, our education, and art is going, no. Take that back. He's saying that as our religion, education, art, all of those things look abroad, so does our spirit. We're not looking within. And he says that men plume themselves on the improvement of society. Everywhere people are just posturing, saying like pluming, to pluck your feathers and put on a show like you care about the improvement of society. How many presidential debates are we going to have before we see something change? Obviously, they're talking about issues that are distractions. Hey, look over here at this little small issue. Hey, let's look over here at this little small issue, and let's put a salve on that. A little temporary band-aid. Let's distract people from information that can actually change a nation. So this stuff here, what he's talking about, can improve the actual man or woman, and then improve society, improve the world. So he's talking about why society never advances, and let's see what he says on that subject. Society never advances. It recedes as fast on one side as it gains on the other. It undergoes continual changes. It's barbarous, it's civilized, it is Christianized, it is rich, it is scientific, but this change is not amelioration. For everything that is given, something is taken. Society acquires new arts and loses old instincts. What a contrast between the well-clad, reading, writing, thinking American, with the watch, a pencil, and a bill of exchange in his pocket, and the naked New Zealander, whose property is a club, a spear, a mat, and an undivided 20th of shed to sleep under. But compare the health of the two men, and you shall see that the white man has lost his aboriginal strength. If the traveler tells us truly, strike the savage with a broad axe, and in a day or two the flesh shall unite and heal as if you struck the blow into soft pitch. And the same blow shall send the white to his grave. That's very interesting, the example he uses. It's a violent example, but he's talking about really how far we've come from certain instinctual advantages. So we went through all of these stages in history to get to the point we have, but have we thrown out, as they say, the baby with the bathwater? Do we throw out everything we've learned in the past so that we can do one new thing? Do we not learn the information of minds who have figured out a certain way of doing things so that we can say, oh, eureka, we figured out how to change a light bulb, so let's just focus on the light bulb and move forward and start relearning all of the things that they learned in the past all over again. He's talking about how a traveler can get struck with an axe and it could kill him, just like certain diseases or sicknesses that were probably trivial to Native Americans when the first pilgrimage happened. They came here and they were breaking out with all these diseases and things, and they figured that these people were living in squalor and just so sick and sickly, but they were fine. Their immune systems had built up because they knew instinctually how to live and be in harmony with nature and the land, where these people came from their civilized culture and they had no experience or exposure to certain things, so it took them out like nothing. And then also these more primitive or aboriginal cultures, they have healing agents, so in his example, he gives the same blow to the savage with the broad axe, and in a day or two the flesh shall unite and heal as if you struck the blow into a soft pitch. So it's like a paper cut to him. He's like, oh, that'll heal up. We got a cure for that. Compare the health of the more advanced with the more native, and you'll find that society acquires new arts and loses old instincts. Let's continue. The civilized man has built a coach but has lost the use of his feet. He is supported on crutches but lacks so much support of muscle. He has a fine Geneva watch, but he fails of the skill to tell the hour by the sun. A Greenwich nautical almanac he has, and so being sure of the information when he wants it, the man in the street does not know a star in the sky. The solstice he does not observe, the equinox he knows as little, and the whole bright calendar of the year is without a dial in his mind. This is interesting, and he goes on with more examples, but he's saying that that information was not primitive. To be able to tell, where you're at by a star in the sky, and to know the hour of the day by the sun, to know about the equinox and all of these things, which way back in the day they had the information to learn about stars and how the planetary alignments impact the human being. Charles F. Hannell talks about this in his book You, about how more than just being a Taurus or an Aquarius or whatever your sign is, there's deeper things if you learn about the natal birth chart. Everything has an impact. It tells you more about what kind of person you are if you're a fixed sign, whether you are the type to start a project or you're the type to finish a project. Or if you're a mutable sign, if you're the bridge between the two, and you can help those kinds of people come together. These things help us to learn how we interact both with the outer world, but how the outer world can better interact with us so that we can come together and maximize each of our unique strengths. So where my plot of land to till might be that I am very steady and I think about things so that I can come up with a brilliant solution, but I'm not so much as the signs that are, I can't even think of the term, but the signs that go out there and start things. They start things they don't even care about 50 years down the line. They haven't really thought it through, but they're very good at starters. Their initiative is strong. I might need that person to partner with to bring this thing off the ground. Or I might need one of those people in that mutable sign to say, hey, you've got a brilliant idea and you've got the wherewithal and the energy to drive it and bring it forward. And they come together in harmony, and then we work together to birth these ideas to the world. But that's getting off topic. Emerson says that to know of those things is not like ancient history. It's still relevant today to know and understand these things. And while we get our Geneva watches and whatnot, you can't tell the hour. I feel like it's become common for people to say how these cell phones that we have now with the stored phone numbers, now you don't know so many people's phone numbers, and you're in an emergency, your cell phone dies and you need to contact someone. Do you know their phone number? Have we diminished our ability, our sense of memory by having these gadgets that store all the information? It's just interesting to think about. Continuing on, he says, his notebooks impair his memory. His libraries overload his wit. The insurance office increases the number of accidents. Now this was said, the Self-Reliance was written in 1841. Insurance office increases the number of accidents. Can we say that the hospitals increase the number of patients? And it may be a question whether machinery does not encumber, whether we have not lost by refinement some energy, by a Christianity entrenched in establishments and forms some vigor of wild nature. For every Stoic was a Stoic, but in Christendom, where is the Christian? There is no more deviation in the moral standard than in the standard of height or bulk. No greater men are now than ever were. A singular equality may be observed between the great men of the first and of the last ages. Nor can all the science, art, religion, and philosophy of the 19th century avail to educate greater men than Plutarch's heroes 3 or 4 and 20 centuries ago. Now I want to stop here because I was reading this and I said, I really want to understand this, and I don't know who Plutarch is. So I look it up, and he's a Greek philosopher from back in the 1500s. And I was reading about Plutarch, and I found something a little pretty interesting. Now Plutarch, it says, his best known work is The Parallel Lives. That's what it was called. And it's a series of biographies of famous Greeks and Romans arranged in pairs to illuminate their common moral virtues and vices. The surviving lives contain 23 pairs, each with one Greek life and one Roman life, as well as 4 unpaired single lives. So this was really interesting because when I read about Emerson, I guess he wrote the introduction to one copy or one edition of Plutarch's Parallel Lives. Emerson says that this work was a Bible for heroes. I think he does. Yeah, Bible for heroes. And how interesting. I would like to do a modern version of some of our great American heroes, or in comparison of the virtues that each of these people possess. These people in the past that we said were so great, what was it about them? You're going to find a common thread. And Plutarch was great for putting them all together side by side and giving it to the reader. But here's the sad thing. It says somewhere in here, it talks about the surviving works of his, or it talks about how you can't really find his original work anymore. Talking about Plutarch, it says that the works were truncated or lucinae, which means that the blocks of it are missing, or that they were changed or tampered with by other people. So information over the years has slowly been, like there's even civilizations where they said that when I don't know if it, forgive me, but I think it was the Catholic movement or whatnot, where they burned books that were not in alignment or in harmony with their beliefs or the teachings that they had, the teachings of the church. That's information. People spreading information. You don't have to believe it, but we shouldn't be withheld it. So now again, this is 1500s, a guy talking about virtues and morals and things that could help us to break out of these shackles that we created again in society by throwing out the old knowledge and wisdom and trying to start over from each century on until we've become so far removed from these teachings. It's important that people do what Corey Anderson did and what I am hoping to do by reading these books, inspiring conversations, and for us, you and me, and everybody else that you know who has these kinds of thoughts, to be the ones to start a conversation again. Put your thoughts down on paper. Analyze society. Think about things. Put your own take out into the universe. We need to leave as much truth behind as possible, and we need to equip ourselves with the wisdom of the past so we aren't reinventing the wheel. We can start where this left off. We can manifest greater lives. We can live our greatest lives yet, but we have to pay attention to the details that were already well known in the past, not to deviate and just try and start over and just be like, oh, hey, I've got an iPhone 12. Well, you had a 10. Or let me count right. You had an 11, you had a 10, you had a 9, you had an iPhone 6, you had an iPhone 4. What more have you accomplished? You've spent more money, and the price is going right up. You need to be an inventor and a thinker. And I'm going to stop and I'm going to continue. Stop talking and I'm going to continue reading. Here we are. Not in time is the race progressive. Phocion, Socrates, Anaxagoras, Diogenes are great men, but they leave no class. He who is really of their class will not be called by their name, but will be his own man, and in his turn the founder of a sect. The arts and inventions of each period are only its costume, and do not invigorate men. The harm of the improved machinery may compensate its good. Hudson and Bering accomplished so much in their fishing boats as to astonish Perry and Franklin, whose equipment exhausted the resources of science and art. Galileo, with an opera glass, discovered a more splendid series of celestial phenomena than anyone since. Columbus found the New World in an undecked boat. It is curious to see the periodical disuse and perishing of means and machinery which were introduced with loud laudation a few years or centuries before. The great genius returns to essential man. We reckon the improvements of the art of war among the triumphs of science, and yet Napoleon conquered Europe by the bivouac, which consisted of falling back on naked valor and disencumbering it of all aids. I looked up the bivouac, and that was basically a practice of going into, soldiers going into battle without cover or tents or anything. So it's essentially losing all of the glitz and glamour or whatever that you use to be, like they say about when you're going camping. If you go camping when you have an RV with a shower and a stove, you're not really camping. You're not really doing it in nature. And he's saying that Napoleon conquered Europe by falling back on naked valor and disencumbering it of all aids. The emperor held it impossible to make a perfect army, says Las Casas, or Cases, in quotes, without abolishing our arms, magazines, commissaries, and carriages, until, in imitation of the Roman custom, the soldier should receive his supply of corn, grind it in his hand mill, and bake his bread himself. Again, the full quote. Or, the emperor held it impossible to make a perfect army without abolishing our arms, magazines, commissaries, and carriages, until, in imitation of the Roman custom, the soldier should receive his supply of corn, grind it in his hand mill, and bake his bread himself. Society is a wave. This is the next paragraph. Emerson says, society is a wave. The wave moves onward, but the water of which it is composed does not. The same particle does not rise from the valley to the ridge. Its unity is only phenomenal. The persons who make up a nation today, next year die, and their experience with them. And so the reliance on property, including the reliance on governments which protect it, is the want of self-reliance. Men have looked away from themselves and at things so long that they have come to esteem the religious, learned, and civil institutions as guards of property, and they deprecate assaults on these because they feel them to be assaults on property. They deprecate assaults on these, so they'll get mad when someone comes out against a religious institution or a learning institution or a civil institution, a government, because they say, hey, you can't talk about them, they're protecting us. But no, they're not attacking whatever it is that the religion represents or the government represents. They're attacking the misuse of these institutions and the way that the institutions are not advancing society. So if you analyze the medical institution, a lot of people, I had a speech class and we talked about, we had to take a survey of what topics were no-no topics for certain people in the audience, so you could tailor your speech to make sure that you are delivering it in a way that your audience can hear your persuasive speech or what have you. And I asked a question about would it be a no-no for me to speak on the medical profession or the medical institution? And one gal in the class, she said, yes, because everyone in my family are doctors. So she was saying, admittedly, because everyone in my family are doctors, I would have a problem with you saying anything about the medical profession. But if I zoom out and see what the speech assignment was to survey the audience of what we can and can't talk about, there's a problem. That's flawed in itself. There shouldn't be anything taboo to talk about. Yeah, we have our different beliefs, but we should not be so closed-minded and fixed that because so-and-so that we know does so-and-so job that we can't hear something about it that might help us to help them as well. So you're in a medical profession, but we know that pharmaceuticals are starting to become a conflict of interest, or doctors are involving themselves with pharmaceutical companies doing a conflict of interest where we'll pay the doctor kickbacks to prescribe a certain medication to a patient that's not going to really heal from it better than maybe some other modality. That doesn't mean that the doctors are, well, that doctor might be, but that doesn't mean that all doctors in general are bad because I point to this discussion, because I start this discussion. Not that that was what I was going to say, but in an example, the person who brings that conversation to the table is not saying that all doctors or all medicine is bad. They're questioning the acts of those particular parties to the situation. We should be able to talk about that. So Emerson is saying that these people start to, he says that men have looked away from themselves and at things for so long that they've come to esteem them, religions, institutions, as the guards of property, and they deprecate assaults on them because they feel them to be assaults on property. They measure their esteem of each other by what each has and not by what each is. But a cultivated man becomes ashamed of his property out of new respect for his nature. Especially he hates what he has if he sees that it is accidental, or came to him by inheritance, or gift, or crime. He then feels that it is not having. It does not belong to him. He has no root in him and merely lies there. Okay, let me read that again with more flow, because this is a very good sentence. He says, a cultivated man becomes ashamed of his property out of new respect for his nature. Especially he hates what he has if he sees that it is accidental, came to him by inheritance or gift or crime. Then he feels that it is not having. It does not belong to him, has no root in him, and merely lies there because no revolution or no robber takes it away. But that which a man is, does always by necessity acquire, and what the man acquires is living property, which does not wait the beck of rulers or mobs or revolutions or fire or storm or bankruptcies, but perpetually renews itself wherever the man breathes. Thy lot or portion of life, said the Caliph Ali, is seeking after thee. Therefore, be at rest from seeking after it. That's a quote. Again, from Caliph Ali. Thy lot or portion of life is seeking after thee. Therefore, be at rest from seeking after it. Our dependence on these foreign goods leads us to our slavish respect for numbers. The political parties meet in numerous conventions. The greater the concourse, and with each new uproar of announcement, the delegation from Essex, the Democrats from New Hampshire, the Whigs of Maine, the young patriot feels himself stronger than before by a new 1,000 of eyes and arms. In like manner, the reformers summon conventions and vote and resolve in multitude. Not so, O friends, will the God deign to enter and inhabit you, but by a method precisely the reverse. It is only as a man puts off all foreign support and stands alone that I see him to be strong and to prevail. Emerson says, ask nothing of men, and in the endless mutation, thou only firm column must presently appear the upholder of all that surrounds thee. He who knows that power is inborn, that he is weak because he has looked for good out of him and elsewhere, and so perceiving, once he realizes this, he throws himself unhesitatingly on his thought, instantly rights himself, stands in the erect position, commands his limbs, works miracles, just as a man who stands on his feet is stronger than a man who stands on his head. It's brilliant. In The Science of Getting Rich, even Wallace D. Wattles, he uses that. The man who realizes that he's only weak because he has looked outside of himself, and upon so realizing this, instantly rights himself, stands erect, and forms a dominant mental attitude. That's what Wallace D. Wattles says. So use all that is called fortune. Most men gamble with her, and gain all, and lose all, as her wheels roll. But do thou leave as unlawful these winnings, and deal with cause and effect, the chancellors of God. In the will, work and acquire, and thou hast chained the wheel of chance, and shalt sit hereafter out of fear from her rotations. A political victory, a rise of rents, the recovery of your sick, or the return of your absent friend, or some other favorable event raises your spirits, and you think good days are preparing for you. Do not believe it. Nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Nothing can bring you peace but the triumph of principles. That is it. That is self-reliance. Wasn't it awesome? Let me read that again since we're over. Nothing can bring you peace but yourself. Nothing can bring you peace but the triumph of principles. And that's what we are learning. Proven and timeless principles so that we can get them and grasp them and enact them here and now and see what we can do to break the chains of whatever's not working today and start a new way. Wouldn't you like to live and thrive? Wouldn't you like to be free to do with your time what you will? Wouldn't you like to add something to the world, something memorable, something lasting? Wouldn't you like to leave something behind for your family, for your friends, just for yourself? Wouldn't you like to just achieve? Wouldn't you like to not struggle? They have it wrong. Life isn't about struggling. Life isn't about failing and suffering. It's about thriving, living, experiencing. But those are powers, and those powers are only possessed right now by the people who know information, certain information, and we're sharing that information with everyone so all can have those powers. It is within all of us the ability to live, to learn, to love, and to leave a legacy. As Stephen Covey says, that is each and every one of our birthright. And we are endeavoring to share that with each and every one of you through our journey as we learn this information. So thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.